What's your story that sounds like a lie but is 100% true? I stole a couple oranges from Arnold Schwarzenegger. In all fairness, they weren't really his oranges. I was 10 and on a tour of the state house in California while Arnold was governor. The tour guide pointed out the oranges trees outside of his office and called them the governor's oranges. So, naturally, I took a couple, didn't tell anyone until we got home. My uncle and I ate the governor's oranges. Got the SWAT team called on me and my brother when we were 9. They had 2 helicopters surrounding us and a team with guns loaded pointing at the 2 of us. What was it for? Some crazy lady complained there were armed men going on a shooting rampage. Little did she know we were 9 shooting glow-in-the-dark Nerf guns. I got to play pool with Keanu Reeves while he filmed the Matrix sequels. He was a total asshole. I can't even finish the sentence. He was the nicest guy I ever met. When I was about 4 or 5, I always used to get a lot of colds. Like pretty much every week, and my nose was running all the time. Like considerably more than would be normal for a kid my age. My mom took me to the doctor to see if there was any reason why, and he managed to find a stone wedged up my nose. He reckoned it had been up there a couple of years as the nose tissue had grown around it. Apparently the best thing to do was put a drill up my nose and break the stone into pieces so it would come out. Yes, you read that right. Put a drill up a small child's nose. So anyway, that's what happened. And to be fair, it worked. It was obviously quite a scary experience given my age, however, and I still feel affected as an adult. Even to this day I'm still terrified of people putting drills up my nose. When I was 17, I was walking back from a New Year's Eve party in Melbourne with my brother and cousin. A possum was walking along the pavement towards us and my cousin says, "Oh look, a ring-tailed possum. They're usually scared of humans." As he says this, the little ducker climbs up my leg and onto my back, digging in his claws. I screamed and started spinning in circles trying to get it off me while my bro and cousin just pissed themselves laughing. I told my parents about it the next day and they didn't believe a word of it. I used to work as a professional food taster for Unilever, and I invented the chocolate plug on the bottom of the cornetto cones. Many years ago I was jumped by 3 guys after coming out of a bar. Somehow I was the only one standing at the end of the fight. It was entirely a fluke and I don't even really remember how it happened because it was over in a flash. I think one of them may have accidentally punched the other and I must have just got exceptionally lucky with my desperate swings. I suspect one of them may have even slipped on some ice and hit his head on the way down. An acquaintance saw it happen from down the street and she told the rest of my friends that I was some kind of MMA ninja. But it was truly just luck. For years I had this reputation as some kind of badass fighter, based solely on a 6-second interaction with 3 drunken idiots on a slippery sidewalk. Back in Russia when I was 14, friends and I stumbled on an abandoned mansion in the woods outside of Moscow. We hung out there daily for a week because nobody was there, ate their food, used the tub, watched TV, etc. We rummaged through the house and found a bunch of guns in a basement but didn't really think much of it. Went back to the city with my mom to buy groceries and such. Then came back to continue our partying. On the way there, me and my friend were followed by a black Mercedes. 2 men got out and screaming "those are the itches" started chasing us. We ran into the woods and hid under a huge log. The men ran right past us. One said that they have to find us. Another said that we are just malokasasi, milk suckers, aka very young, and shouldn't be much trouble. We stayed under that log for another hour to make sure they left and ran home. After that we avoided that area. Turns out the whole place was rigged with cameras and we had no idea. Since it was mid-90s Russia, the people were mafia that sold weapons and saw us raiding the place on camera. I've posted this story before. In a welding shop, atop a 12-foot ladder, running 3-inch chain welds along the roof seam of an aluminum trailer. I leaned out too far to get that one last weld and the ladder tipped. I literally walked down the side of the ladder as it fell to the ground, without even coming near losing my balance. I did with a Cobra-matic MIG gun in my hand, and my hood down, so both encumbered and completely blind. The very best part? It was witnessed by my partner, who went around telling everyone that I had pulled off some wire-for-looking it. A once-in-a-lifetime move that would 100% end in disaster if I ever tried to replicate it. My parents and I went to a safari park as a kid in the early 80s. Very not up to code place. All the safe animals roamed free. We were idiots and went through in our own car. Well, we also fed the animals, so we almost got peed on by a huge giraffe. A buffalo stuck its head in my dad's window. A pregnant zebra stole my mom's apple, and now that was before we reached monkey land. That was the highlight. Monkeys are rude furry duckers when food is involved. Monkeys everywhere. Yet we fed them. Still, it was relatively okay. That was when the bear showed up. This guy must have seen Summit. He was older than dirt and looked like a fur rug with nails. Senile as duck most likely. So he'd been around most of the trip and wanted in on the food. So after some debate we decided he was docile enough and held out a cookie. Poor old Pokey the bear dragged himself over to the car. Very slowly and gently raised his paws and politely took the cookie. Then this little hand comes down and snatched the cookie from his paw. Bastard monkeys. That bear just snapped. I can only imagine those monkeys had been stealing his it for ages. He rested up trying to kill this monkey and we hit the gas. Bear ducked off. But this scared the monkey, who fell onto the hood of our car. He then got scared by the windshield wipers and knocked off our mirror. He then proceeded to notice his own reflection and run off with it. Funniest story to look back on. Once when I was 5 years old, my cousin asked me if I could do a flip. I lied, and she said do one. So I did. I even landed on my feet. I've never done another flip after that. I somehow ended up in the employ of a crime family, but in a completely legitimate business. The company paid for a marketing campaign but got bumped for the money, and so these guys as the owners decided to hunt the guy who did it down. They got his business address and staked out his office. Then they followed him home and waited there for a bit. When he next left, they kidnapped him. Took him to a warehouse and beat the it out of him to get him to return the money, but he swore blind he didn't have a clue what they were talking about. Turns out the guy they were after lived with his identical twin brother. My buddy and I were about 10 years old. Around the neighborhood was a long stretch of sidewalk, and sometimes semi-trucks would park what they haul there and leave it there, driving off in their cab. It was one of those grain or sand boxes that opened from the bottom to release the load, and the top was not covered. As kids we didn't know what was in there and decided to climb up to see what was inside. As we started climbing up, a police vehicle slams his brakes next to the boxes, yells at us with a serious look on his face. "Are you having fun?" We both went up. He repeats himself. "Are you having fun?" We both reply. "Oh yeah." He yells. "Good," and he proceeds to do a vehicular donut and takes off, tires screaming. We both looked at each other like WTF. The night before an ultrasound for my pregnant wife, we went for Chinese food. We knew we were having twins, but not the gender. They happen at different times. You can see they're twins earlier. This brand of fortune cookie had the Learn Chinese feature on the back. Mine said boy, my wife's said son. Our twin boys turned 12 on the 29th of February. Technically they turned 3 though. Johnny Depp bought me a snow cone in California about 8 years ago. I asked Neil Armstrong if he actually walked on the moon. My parents bought his folks' house, and 16-year-old me had the audacity to ask him directly. I donated sperm to this couple because the husband was infertile. After the baby was born, she divorced him and started dating me, and I immediately got her pregnant again. Now we have 2 kids. In a practice room during my undergraduate years, I sang a soprano high C above high C in alt altissimo. I'm a guy. If anyone had been there to hear it or record it, I would have broken the world record for highest notes sung by a man. My sister once stabbed my brother's arm with a pencil. In return, my brother stabbed me in the arm with a pair of scissors because my sister ran away and I was in his vicinity. Ended up getting 2 stitches. When I was in my 20s, before we had families and bills, a couple of friends and I pooled together $250 each for a $1,000 raffle ticket. The prize, a round of golf with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Well, we won. So a couple of weeks later there we were golfing with Arnold. When he first arrived, he greeted us, shook our hands, and had a very disinterested demeanor. We didn't think much of it. None of us had met an A-list celebrity before and we didn't want to come off like excited groupies. We get to the 6th hole and Arnold is smoking a huge cigar and still hasn't said a word to us. Barely even looked at us. We're still trying to play it cool around him. Well, except my friend Doug. So Doug goes over to him and says something to the tune of, "Arnold, we kinda spent a lot of money for this and we were hoping you'd kinda hang out more." So Arnold slowly looks up at Doug with a scowl, takes the cigar out of his mouth and says, "Hey Dougie, do you remember your first blowjob?" Doug is thrown off a little, takes a second and replies, yeah. To which Arnold then asks, "How did it taste?" We all start laughing and then Arnold says, "Come on guys, I've been ducking with you. You guys took so ducking long." After that we all had a blast and Arnold was cool as it the rest of the round. Michael Clark Duncan bumped into me, knocking me on the floor. He reached down and took my hand and helped me up, asked if I was okay. I said yeah and we went on our separate ways. My cat cursed at me. I woke up one morning after a dream, jumped, and accidentally kicked my cat, who was sleeping next to my leg. The cat stood up, stretched, looked me in the eye, and made a noise that I would swear was FFFFFKR. One night while sailing in the middle of the Pacific, I stood up in the companionway to look at the stars. A flying fish jumped out of the sea and hit me in the nuts, then landed inside the boat flapping around. A friend converted his cuckoo clock to digital audio so that when the bird came out on the hour it went FCKU, FCKU, instead of the normal cuckoo sound made by the clock's bellows. My GF got pregnant but I wasn't the father. She said a ghost did it to her at the birth. 3 random dudes just showed up with gifts. I'm thinking about writing a book about it, but who's going to believe that it? Thanks for the silver. I fell asleep during my part at a school play when I was 7. I had a dream that my long lost friend texted me after months, and the next day she actually did text me. I was 16 years old when my boyfriend, older, volunteered me to work with the police vice unit. I would go into bars and order alcohol. If I was served a drink, the bartenders would get fined. Here's the kicker. The vice officer paid me with cash and beer. As a teenager I rode my bike down a mountain road and when I tried to brake at an intersection the brake cable broke and then I was hit by a car. Luckily for me the handlebars had rammed into the turn signal housing of the car in such a way that the car dragged me to a standstill without touching me. So, back when I was in high school, we had a snowstorm. Hundreds of us gathered on the playing fields for a massive free-for-all snowball fight. Some were a little rougher than others, and would perform a snow plow, basically just tripping you up and kicking snow all over you. As I was wandering through the chaos, a couple of older lads noticed me and started to give chase. I knew what would happen, so I started sprinting like mad. Here's the unbelievably slapstick bit. Mid-stride, I scooped up some snow, made a ball, looked back, and lightly popped it straight up. A couple seconds pass. I look back again to see it plop right on one of their heads, causing him to lose balance and take his butt down with him, getting away scot-free. I laughed as I made my escape through the crowd. Sometimes I wonder if they remember and feel the embarrassment of getting done dirty like that. I have 12 patriot ancestors who fought in the revolution. I'm a historian and genealogist. I know some people who went to great lengths to prove just one ancestor so they could join the DAR or SAR. So they look at me sideways like I'm obviously making it up. It's just that both sides of my family lived in a strongly anti-British Presbyterian, Scots-Irish area of the Carolinas. Almost all males from their teens to their 40s were out fighting the British. When I was 5, in the 70s, a neighbor shot me in the left shin with a BB gun from his bedroom window. It hurt like a Methodica. I remember seeing him in the window, take aim and fire, then the burning of the wound. His sisters consoled me until they realized it was just a scratch and then dropped me like yesterday's newspaper. Went home and the kid disappeared. Literally. Turns out it wasn't his first violent attack. Never saw him again, though his dad and sisters continued to live there for years after. I've never seen a Star Wars movie. I have a baseball signed by every member of I think either the 2017 or 2018 New York Yankees. I was at a game with my grandfather. We basically had front row seats. We were there with TAPS. If you know the organization, before the game starts, when they're doing the national anthem and whatnot, we're invited onto the field. right in front of the Yankees dugout. Nobody else seemed to have the prerogative, so I just turned around and asked one of the players if he'd sign my ball. He said yeah, and once finishing proceeded to pass the ball around to every person on the team, including the coach. And I think my close second was the time I was going down a double black diamond cliff when skiing, wiped out at the bottom of the cliff, and somehow managed to dislocate and relocate my knee in the same fall. I feel perfectly fine despite having tumbled about 30 feet, picked up my skis and continued down.